What's up everyone, this is CoyneDawg here with another GTA video. So in this video we're going back to my head-to-head series, and today I've got for you the Infernus Classic versus the Turismo Classic. So we've had these two beautiful sports classics vehicles added to the game over the past couple of weeks. Everyone was really hyped up about them, including myself, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take them through my three different tests to find out how they perform against each other and find out what the new king of the sports classics class is going to be. So first up we've got the 2 mile drag. So this is just a 2 mile long straight to test the acceleration of these two vehicles. This was a really interesting test, to be honest, because I watched some videos a few weeks back on YouTube of other people doing drag races with these vehicles, and they were generally finding that the Turismo Classic was significantly quicker than the Infernus Classic in a straight line. However, that's not what I found with my test, and the only reason I can come up with for why that might be the case is the Infernus Classic was obviously affected by this bug up until a couple of days ago. If anyone's not aware what the bug was, I've got a video on my channel which explains it. However, that bug has now been fixed, and in this test, at least on this track at 60 FPS on PC, they are very closely matched. And I ran this test 12 times because I was starting to question my results on this. I even got someone else to come on the circuit with me, and we both found the same thing. But in terms of the actual overall time, so there was less than 1/10 of a second difference between the two vehicles on that drag strip. So when I saw that, I thought, you know, these cars are very closely matched. But obviously, straight line acceleration is only part of the stories. So this is a Bridging the Gap, which is a bumpy street circuit. And what I will say about both of these vehicles is they are very difficult to drive on the limit. They require a hell of a lot of concentration. You cannot just let your mind wander just for 1 second, or you'll end up in the barriers or spinning. They're both very difficult to drive. So first up, we've got the Infernus, and the Infernus it's got a very strange handling. This test was done after the handling bug was fixed, by the way, but it's very delicate the way that you have to handle this vehicle. The back end is quite easy to lose, and once you lose the back end on this, it's very difficult to get it back because of the way that it spins. You just tend to end up in the barrier. So you have to be very delicate and careful with the stick as you're going into corners, flicking the stick as we do in the racing community, just to gently get it in and make sure you don't skid that back end, because it just kicks round as soon as it goes. So yeah, it took me a while to get used to it, but once I got the hang of the car, you know, it wasn't too bad. But like I said, you do have to really concentrate on it because of that really dangerous back end that it's got. And then we've got the Turismo, which is like the opposite end of the spectrum. So it does have a very loose back end again, but you can catch it and you can use that back end sliding around to your advantage round some corners, and just to get that turning a little bit better. So it is better in some ways to have that loose end like this on this vehicle. It is a little bit of a pain how loose it can be sometimes, but yeah, that is definitely the big difference in terms of the handling between the two. In terms of where the performance difference lies, it's clearly in the cornering ability of this car. It's just, you can get on the power so early out the corners, and you can brake so much later. The Infernus had really bad brakes on it. I had to adjust my braking points quite dramatically compared to where I'm used to braking on this track, compared to the Turismo, which had very similar brakes to a lot of the other vehicles that I've tested around this circuit. But yeah, you can just get on the power so early out of the corners with this thing, and it just grips. You know, it's just ridiculous, to be honest, how good this car is. So in terms of the difference in performance, so over 2 seconds difference in the Turismo's favour, which is just a crazy amount of difference to have in a class. It's just, I can't believe Rockstar have done this and made it so overpowered, to be honest. And then we've got Doc's Points, which is a smooth stunt piece circuit with mainly mid to high speed corners. So I always do tests on different types of circuits, because obviously different cars have strengths and weaknesses. So I was hoping that maybe the Infernus would do a little bit better around here. It took this track pretty well, to be honest. In the very high speed corners, particularly around the S section round here, it struggled quite a bit with that. I had to lift off and brake a little bit in there, whereas the Turismo would handle that section a lot better. But you know, it wasn't too bad. It was certainly a lot easier on this circuit than it was on the last one with this car, because of the lack of bumps on this track. That does play into the hands of both of these vehicles very well, to be honest, because they were both quite skittish over bumpy surfaces, which is to be expected on cars that are supposed to be sports classics, where obviously they wouldn't have had high-tech suspension and all that sort of stuff back then. But yeah, not too bad. So, you know, it was the quickest car in the Sports Classics class for the whole week that we had it. It is quite a lot faster than the Sterling GT, but unfortunately they then decided to bring the Turismo out and make that even quicker. And not just slightly quicker, ridiculously quicker. This car is on the pace of some of the supercars that I've tested around this circuit. It shouldn't have been put into the Sports Classics class for a start anyway, because it's not a classic sports car. You know, if you look at the Sterling GT, the Z-Type, all those cars, they are based on proper classic cars. They're not based on a 90s or late 80s supercar. You know, it shouldn't have been put into the Sports Classic class anyway. But then to make it so ridiculously quick, it's just it just proves that Rockstar do not test these vehicles against other vehicles. To be honest, because if they did, they wouldn't have done what they've done with this. You know, they should have balanced this out with the Infernus, so at least we had two different vehicles that you could use in this class. But what they've essentially done is replaced the Sterling GT, which was so overpowered in 99% of races in the Sports Classics class, unless it was a highway race where the Z-Type was king. And they've just replaced that overpowered car with an even more overpowered car, which is the Turismo. So look at that, and again, nearly 2 seconds difference between the Turismo and the Infernus. And it's just, I'm pretty angry, to be honest, that they've done this, because they could have created as another really nice class to drive with that lots of people would use. But they've just created a car that is just so overpowered that there's only one car you can now use in this class to be competitive again. So yeah, hope you found that useful, guys. Thanks very much for watching. I'll be back again soon.